Hello, welcome to Lesson 5 Notes. So today we're going to start solving quadratic equations, and we're going to learn multiple ways to solve quadratic equations. The first one is going to be by factoring and then using what's called the zero product property. So up here, the important part is, what is the zero product property? Well, that property says that if you have two values and you don't know what they are, but when you multiply them, you get 0. Like here, we have a times b, that's going to equal 0. I don't know what a is, I don't know what b is, but I know for sure that what has to happen, if they multiply to be 0, then either a has to equal 0 or b is equal to 0. Now keep in mind, this is not going to be true for any other product that you would get. So if I had a times b equals 6, there's a infinite amount of possibilities what a and b could be. I don't know, it doesn't mean that a has to equal 6 or b has to equal 6. That's not true, because it could be 2 and 3, right? It could be 12 and a half. Those multiplied together is 6. So this is only true if your product of two factors or more is going to equal 0, okay? Then one of them has to equal 0. All right, so let's go through here the steps to follow when solving an equation by factoring. The first thing you want to make sure, let me get a regular font. The first thing is you want to set the equation equal to 0. Sometimes that's already going to be done for you. Step 2 is to factor. Step 3 is to set each factor equal to 0 and solve. All right, so anytime you're going to be solving by factoring, these are the steps you're going to take. Now I'm going to say, please don't get solving, don't confuse that with factoring. When you factor, you're just rewriting it. You're taking something that's already been multiplied out, a product, and rewriting it as the product of two factors. Another thing is, you can't solve an equation, you can't solve for x, if you don't have an equation. So the problems that we did previously, they didn't have an equal sign. If something doesn't have an equal sign, you absolutely cannot solve it. All right, so let's take a look at number 1. All right, so looking at our steps, first one is set the equation equal to 0, done. Step 2, factor, done. Step 3, set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So I know now if my two factors are x plus 2 and x minus 3, then I know if I take these two values, and I don't know what they are, but I know that the product is going to be 0. Either x plus 2 has to equal 0 or x minus 3 has to equal 0. Again, imagine like if your teacher had in her hand, she's not going to show you, she's covering it up, but she has two numbers, and she said, I'm not going to tell you what these equal, but if I was to multiply them together, I'm going to get 0. You know that either the number in her left hand or in her right hand are equal to 0. Okay, so then the last step is to solve. So here we're going to get, if we subtract 2 from both sides, x is going to equal -2, or x is equal to 3. Those are the two possible solutions that x can be. I could plug in if I want, just to check my answer, especially if I have extra time. -2 plus 2 times -2 minus 3. Does this equal 0? Here I would get 0 times -5. That does equal 0. If I plug in 3, in the first parenthesis, I would get 3 plus 2. In the second parenthesis, I get 3 minus 3. Will this equal 0? 5 times 0 does work out to equal 0. So therefore, I would know that that is correct. All right, let's look at number 2. Again, first step, set the equation equal to 0, done. Factor, done. Set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So if I was to set the first factor here, it's just y. So I would get y equals 0 or 3y plus 4 equals 0. To solve for y, the first equation's done. I already have what y equals. The second one, I would have to subtract 4. So I would get 3y equals -4, divide both sides by 3, leave that as your answer. Improper fractions are totally fine in this class. All right, number 3, we have 5x minus 4 quantity squared equals 0. This is already in factored form. It's equal to 0, it's already factored, so all I have to do is set 5x minus 4 equal to 0. Now technically there would be two of these. If I wanted to multiply this out and FOIL it, I would have to write it twice. But if I solve it twice, I'm just going to get the same answer both times, so it's kind of a waste of time. If you have a factor that's being squared, such as this one, you only have to solve it once. So divide both sides by 5, and you could leave your answer like this. Those of you that know that that's 0.8, you could write it that way, but I would say don't even bother. Just leave your answer as a fraction. Okay, I would like you to solve number 4 on your own. So please pause the video, go ahead and solve it. Go through your 3 steps if you have to. So maybe some of the steps will already be done for you, but go ahead and solve number 4 and then check your answer with me. All right, hopefully you got these 2 answers. X is gonna equal either 0 or 2/3. Remember, leave your answers 2/3. Don't write that as 0.6. You're not going to have a calculator for most of the first semester, so I think it's just better to leave your answers as fractions. Okay, so number 5 is the first one where we encounter a problem that is not in factored form yet. It's not equal to 0 and it's not factored. So we're going to have to do that ourselves. So how am I going to do that? Well, I want everything. I like to have my squared term positive. So when I see that 6y squared on the left here is positive, I'm going to bring this over and I'm going to bring that term over. If I can make my y squared or x squared, whatever the variable squared is positive on the right, then I would bring everything to the right side. So here what I'm going to do is subtract 4. And when I subtract 4 from the left side, there is no like terms, so I just kind of tack it along at the end. And this is going to equal negative 28y. To get this to equal 0, I'm going to add 28y, and I could add the 28y to the negative 5y. So my trinomial becomes 6y squared plus 23y minus 4 equals 0. Step 1, done. Okay, step 2, factor. So first thing I look for, is there a GCF? There is not. So I'm going to do factors of a times c, negative 24, that add up to positive 23. Factors of 24, 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. And so now, because my product is negative, remember, and I have to add it up to a positive, I know my smaller number has to be the negative one. These are the 2 numbers that work. All right, next step, split the middle term. 6y squared minus 1y plus 24y minus 4 is going to equal 0. Factor by grouping, this is what we did earlier, yesterday. Take a y out. 6y minus 1. I need that minus 1 there because remember, if I was to go back and distribute, I need to get 6y squared minus 1y back. Now, plus, the next 2 terms have a 4 in common, so that's 6y minus 1. When my 2 parentheses match, that's a good sign. Final factored form, 6y minus 1, y plus 4 equals 0. All right, so now because we're solving, I use the 0 product property, set each factor equal to 0. So 6y minus 1 equals 0, or y plus 4 is going to equal 0. And let's solve each of these for y. Here I would add 1 to both sides, giving me 6y minus or equals 1. Divide both sides by 6, y is going to equal 1/6. Or over here I would subtract 4, y is going to equal negative 4. Again, if you need to write that down, go back, rewind the video, watch it again as you look at your own paper and see what's written down. But your first step is to get it equal to 0. The equation has to equal 0. Then factor, set each factor equal to 0 and solve. Okay, number 6 over here. I'll start you off and then I'll have you finish. So the first step is subtract 4 from both sides. So I have 2x squared plus 9x minus 5 equals 0. So because these were my 2 constants, I could combine those and simplify. Now I'm ready to factor. There's no GCF, so I'm looking for factors of a times c, negative 10, that add up to positive 9. They are -1, and +10. I know one has to be positive and one has to be negative because the product is negative. Because they have to add up to a +9, I know the digit with the higher absolute value has to be positive. If I flip these signs, they would add up to -9. Go ahead and pause the video, factor this, set each factor equal to 0, and then check your answer against mine. Okay, the two answers that you should have gotten is that x is equal to 1/2 or -5. If you got something different, make sure you ask your teacher when you see him or her in class, and then also make sure you ask tomorrow when you will be practicing these problems in class. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great one. Bye.